Welcome to your deep dive. Looks like you're interested in getting more done
Oh,
and doing work that really matters. Well, you've come to the right place because today we're diving deep into Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World. We've got your notes and highlights right here, and we're going to pull out the most valuable, actionable insights together. I got to admit, I've been trying out some of these deep work techniques myself, and it's harder than it looks. I know you're a huge fan of Newport's work. What really stands out to you from all of this?
what I find fascinating about Newport's approach is how he connects deep work not only to productivity, but to finding real meaning and satisfaction in what you do. We tend to think of efficiency as just cranking out more stuff, but Newport argues it's about focusing your energy on the work that truly makes a difference. That's a message that really resonates with people, and it's something I've seen in my own life as well.
Okay, let's unpack this whole deep work thing. We're talking about that intense, laser-focused state where your brain is firing on all cylinders, right? It's where we do our best, most creative work. And, in this age of information overload, that kind of focus is becoming a superpower.
Exactly. And in those early chapters, Newport drives home the point that deep work allows us to process information on a much deeper level. We start to make connections we wouldn't have seen otherwise. Think about it when you're really in the zone. You can solve complex problems, generate amazing ideas, and learn things so much faster.
I was reading your notes about feeling distracted at work, and it made me think about how this applies to so many different fields.
Right.
Whether you're a programmer coding all day, a writer working on a novel, or even an analyst digging through data.
Yeah.
That ability to focus deeply seems to be what separates those who are good at what they do from those who are truly exceptional.
Yeah.
But the irony is, deep work is getting harder and harder to find.
It really is a paradox, isn't it? The skills that are most valuable are becoming the most difficult to cultivate. And Newport doesn't shy away from pointing the finger at our constantly connected world. We're bombarded with notifications, emails, and messages every minute of the day. Our workspaces are often open, with distractions around every corner. And somewhere along the way, we've been conditioned to multitask, to try and juggle a dozen things at once.
I know, I'm definitely guilty of that. My phone is like an extension of my hand at this point.
Yeah.
But as Newport points out, this constant distraction is actually rewiring our brains and making it harder to focus.
It's like we're training our brains to be scattered and reactive instead of focused and deliberate. When we're constantly switching between tasks, we never really give our minds a chance to fully engage with anything. We end up doing a lot of shallow work, like responding to emails and scrolling through social media. But we never really get to those deep, meaningful tasks that require real concentration.
And that brings us to what I think is one of the most compelling arguments in the book: the link between deep work and a sense of purpose. It's not just about checking things off a list. It's about doing work that feels important and fulfilling.
This is where it gets really interesting. Newport argues that when we engage in deep work, we tap into something deeper, something that connects us to our values and passions. It's not just about getting things done. It's about making a real contribution, about using our talents to create something of value.
I have to admit, I was skeptical about this whole finding meaning in deep work thing at first. But recently, I was struggling to get through this long, complicated article I needed for work. It took hours of focused reading, and there were definitely moments when I wanted to give up and go watch some silly videos online. But when I finally finished it, the feeling of accomplishment was incredible. It wasn't just about getting through the article. It was about pushing myself to understand something complex, and that felt really good.
That's a perfect example of how deep work can be so much more than just productivity, that feeling you're describing, that sense of flow when you're fully immersed in a challenging task.
Sure.
That's what Newport is talking about. And the best part is, it's not limited to work. We can apply this to any area of life where we want to excel.
So how do we actually cultivate this deep work habit in a world that's basically designed to distract us? Newport gives us a roadmap in the form of 4 rules. But before we jump into them, I'm curious, what's one thing you've tried in your own life to make deep work a more regular practice?
For me, it's been all about creating a dedicated workspace. I have this little corner in my home office where I go and I need to really focus. It's quiet, free from clutter. And I only use it for deep work. It's like my own little deep work sanctuary.
I love that. Having a designated space really helps signal to your brain that it's time to get down to business. Okay, let's dive into Newport's rules. The first one is, not surprisingly, work deeply. Seems pretty straightforward, but he's really emphasizing the need for consistent, deep work habits. not just doing it every once in a while.
Yeah.
He even suggests developing routines and rituals that help you get into that focused mindset.
Absolutely. It's about intentionally designing your environment, both physically and mentally, to support deep work. Think about your ideal workspace. What would it look like? Quiet, clutter-free. What kind of ritual could you create to help you transition into that focused mindset? Maybe it's as simple as making a cup of tea or putting on noise-canceling headphones.
You know, that's something I've been experimenting with lately. I used to just dive into work whenever I had a free moment, but now I'm trying to be more intentional about creating a deep work block in my schedule. It's still a work in progress, but I'm already noticing a difference in how much I can get done when I'm not constantly getting interrupted.
Yeah, that's a great example of putting rule #1 into action. And another key point Newport makes is the importance of having a specific goal in mind before each deep work session. What are you trying to accomplish? Having that clarity of purpose prevents you from getting sidetracked and ensures that you're using your precious deep work time effectively.
Okay, ready for rule #2. This one might sound a little counterintuitive. Embrace boredom. Wait. Isn't the whole point to avoid boredom?
I know, right? It sounds crazy in our world of instant gratification,
Oh,
where we reach for our phones the second we feel a twinge of boredom. But what Newport is getting at is that boredom is actually essential for deep work. It's like a muscle we need to strengthen.
so instead of constantly seeking stimulation, we need to train our brains to be okay with a little bit of stillness and silence. That's how we build up our ability to focus for longer periods, right?
Exactly. If you can't sit still for 10 minutes without checking your phone, how are you going to focus on a complex task for an hour or two? And remember those notes you shared about feeling distracted at work. This is where embracing boredom can really make a difference. Think about it this way. Each time you resist the urge to check your phone or browse the internet, when you have a few minutes of downtime, you're actually training your brain to focus. You're building up that mental stamina for those longer, more demanding deep work sessions.
You know what? I'm totally going to try that. I'm the queen of scrolling through social media whenever I have a spare moment. Maybe a little boredom detox is just what I need.
Okay, on to rule #3. And this one might be a little controversial. Quit social media. Yikes. That sounds
Okay.
intense.
Before everyone starts panicking, let's clarify what Newport is suggesting. He's not saying we need to completely abandon social media forever,
Hmm?
but he does encourage us to be much more intentional about how we use it. He calls for a critical evaluation of its role in our lives. Are these platforms genuinely adding value, or are they just sucking up our time and attention? He's really pushing us to recognize that social media can be a major source of shallow distraction, pulling us away from those deep, meaningful tasks that really move the needle. I know, I'm definitely guilty of mindlessly scrolling through my feeds and then wondering where the last hour went.
Exactly. And he proposes a pretty radical idea right now. Only use platforms that truly contribute to your professional or personal goals.
So if you're using social media to build your business or connect with clients, that's great. But if you're just scrolling out of habit, it might be time for a digital declutter. What are some ways we can actually do that?
One option is to try a 30-day social media fast. Delete the apps from your phone, log out of your accounts, and just see how it feels. After a month, you can reevaluate which platforms, if any, you want to bring back into your life. You might be surprised at how much more time and mental energy you have when you're not constantly bombarded with notifications and updates.
I love that idea. It's like hitting the reset button on our relationship with social media and really assessing its impact on our productivity and focus. I think I might even challenge myself to try this. Okay, on to rule #4, drain the shallows. This one seems to be all about how we manage our time and energy, which I think a lot of us struggle with.
This is where Newport draws a crucial distinction between deep work and shallow work. Shallow work refers to all those tasks that don't require a lot of brain power, like answering emails,
Yeah.
scheduling meetings, or doing administrative tasks. They're necessary, but they can easily consume our entire day if we're not careful.
And the tricky thing is that shallow work can be so seductive because it feels productive. We're checking things off our list,
Yeah.
but we're not actually making significant progress on the things that really matter. It's like we're busy being busy, but we're not really moving the needle.
Exactly. And that's why Newport encourages us to drain the shallows, to minimize the amount of time and energy we spend on these low-value tasks so we can free up more space for deep work.
So how do we actually do that? Any practical tips?
One strategy is to identify the shallow tasks that are truly necessary and then schedule specific blocks of time to deal with them. Maybe you dedicate an hour each morning to email and administrative work, but then you close your inbox and focus on deep work for the rest of the day.
I like that. It's about being proactive with our time, instead of letting shallow work dictate our schedule. What are some other ways to minimize shallow work and create more space for those deep work sessions?
Another technique is task batching, which is where you group similar tasks together. For example, instead of checking email constantly throughout the day, you set aside 2 or 3 specific times to process all your emails at once. This allows you to fully focus on email when you're doing it, but then disconnect completely and focus on deep work without that constant distraction.
These are great strategies.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to feel more empowered just thinking about how I can apply these rules to my own life. Remember the beginning of our deep dive, how you mentioned feeling distracted at work? Let's apply these rules to your situation to see how they could help.
That sounds great. What kind of distractions are you facing?
You mentioned struggling to focus on important tasks because you're constantly being pulled away by emails, meetings,
Yeah.
and those little urgent requests that pop up throughout the day.
That's something a lot of people can relate to. It sounds like rule #1, work deeply, could be really helpful here. What if you tried blocking off a specific time slot in your schedule each day, dedicated solely to deep work? It could be first thing in the morning, before the distractions start rolling in. Or maybe you find that you're more focused in the afternoon. Experiment and see what works best for you.
That's a great suggestion. And to really set the stage for focus, maybe I could create a little ritual to signal the start of my deep work session. Something as simple as closing the door to my office, putting on my noise-canceling headphones, and putting my phone on Do Not Disturb.
I love that. Those little rituals can be so powerful. And remember what we discussed about setting a clear goal before each deep work session. Take a moment to define exactly what you want to accomplish during that time. Is it to finish a specific report, brainstorm ideas for a new project, or finally tackle that complex task you've been putting off? Having that clarity of purpose from the outset will help you stay on track and make the most of your deep work time.
Okay, so I've carved out my deep work time. I've got my ritual in place. I'm feeling focused and ready to tackle those important tasks. But then the inevitable happens. An email notification pops up, my phone buzzes with a text message, and suddenly I'm tempted to break my concentration. What do I do?
That's where rule #2, embrace boredom, comes into play. Remember, it's all about training your brain to resist those distractions and stay focused on the task at hand. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone or clicking on that notification, take a deep breath, acknowledge the urge to get distracted, and then gently redirect your attention back to your work.
Yeah. It's almost like a mindfulness practice, noticing the distraction without judgment, and then choosing to refocus. I could see how that could be really helpful, especially when those distractions feel so urgent.
Exactly. It's about building that mental muscle to stay present and resist the constant pull of the shallows. And remember, the more you practice this, the easier it will become. Now, let's imagine you're making progress, you're finding that flow state, and things are getting done. But then you realize that a lot of your time is getting sucked away by social media. You're constantly checking your feeds, getting lost in endless scrolling. And those precious hours that could be devoted to deep work are slipping away.
Sounds familiar. What can I do about that?
This is where rule #3, quit social media, or at least critically evaluate its role in your life, comes in. What if you tried that 30-day social media fast we talked about? Remove the apps from your phone, log out of your accounts, and see what happens. You might be surprised at how much more focused and productive you feel without that constant stream of distractions.
I'm definitely going to consider that. Even just thinking about disconnecting from social media for a while makes me realize how much mental space it's taking up. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about how rule #4, drain the shallows, could help you create more time and energy for deep work. You mentioned feeling overwhelmed by all the shallow tasks that seem to fill your days.
Let's see if we can identify some of those shallow tasks that might be consuming more time than they deserve. Are there certain emails you could unsubscribe from? Meetings that could be skipped or delegated? Are there any administrative tasks you could automate?
Now that you mention it, I bet there are a few things I could streamline or eliminate altogether.
And for those shallow tasks that you can't eliminate completely, remember those time management techniques we discussed earlier. What if you tried scheduling specific blocks of time each day to deal with email and administrative work so they don't spill over into your deep work time?
That's a great idea. I could even experiment with batching similar tasks together to improve my efficiency, for example. Instead of responding to emails one at a time throughout the day, I could set aside a specific time to go through them all at once.
Yeah.
This way, I'm not constantly interrupting my workflow and losing that precious focus.
Exactly. It's about being proactive and strategic with your time, instead of letting those shallow tasks dictate your schedule.
I'm really starting to see how these four rules work together to create a powerful framework for embracing deep work. It's not about becoming a productivity robot. It's about making conscious choices,
Hmm.
about how we spend our time and energy, and being deliberate about creating the space for deep work to flourish.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about reclaiming control of our attention and making sure we're using it in a way that aligns with our values and goals. Remember at the beginning, we talked about how deep work isn't just about getting things done, it's about doing work that matters.
Absolutely. And finding that sense of meaning and fulfillment in what we do. So what kind of impact can we expect to see in our lives when we start incorporating deep work into our daily routines?
It seems like the benefits go way beyond just checking things off our to-do lists.
Yeah, it does feel like more than that.
Exactly. On a practical level, you'll likely see a significant boost in your productivity. You'll be able to get more done in less time because you're working more efficiently and with greater focus.
That's a win in itself.
Mhm.
But I'm guessing it's not just about quantity. The quality of our work probably improves too, right?
Absolutely. When you're able to truly focus and dedicate your full cognitive abilities to a task, you're naturally going to produce higher quality work. Whether it's a report, a presentation, a piece of code, or a creative project, you'll be able to think more deeply, make more connections, and come up with more innovative solutions.
And that's where we come back to that connection between deep work and finding meaning in what we do. When we're engaged in work that challenges us and feels important, it's not just about checking boxes, it's about tapping into a sense of purpose and fulfillment.
And those feelings of satisfaction and accomplishment, they can have a ripple effect on other areas of our lives too. When we feel good about our work, we tend to feel better about ourselves and our lives in general. It can boost our confidence, our self-esteem, and our overall well-being. Remember that goal you mentioned earlier about wanting to feel more fulfilled in your career? Deep work can be a powerful tool for achieving that.
It's like deep work isn't just a productivity hack, it's a path to a more meaningful and satisfying life. I'm feeling super inspired, but I have to admit I'm also a little intimidated.
Deep work sounds amazing, but it also sounds like it takes a lot of discipline and effort.
You're not wrong. It's not a quick fix. It's a commitment to a different way of working and living. But I truly believe the rewards are worth the effort.
So how do we make this sustainable? How do we make deep work a part of our lives without burning ourselves out?
That's where one of Newport's most important points comes in. Deep work isn't about working all the time. It's about working intentionally. It's about finding that sweet spot between focused work and the other important aspects of our lives, like our relationships, our health, and our hobbies.
So it's not about becoming a workaholic. It's about being more mindful and deliberate about how we spend our time and energy.
Exactly. And that brings us to Newport's final piece of advice. Embrace downtime.
Hold on. Didn't we already talk about embracing boredom?
Yes, but downtime is different. Downtime is about completely disconnecting from work, giving our minds and bodies a chance to rest and recharge. It's about engaging in activities that bring us joy and help us de-stress.
Things like spending time with loved ones, going for walks in nature, reading a good book, or listening to music.
Exactly. These activities aren't just distractions, they're essential for our well-being, and they actually enhance our ability to do deep work. Because when we return to our work, we feel refreshed, energized, and ready to focus.
I love that perspective. It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter and living a more balanced and fulfilling life. This has been such an insightful conversation. It feels like we've uncovered a secret weapon for success in this crazy, distracted world. But knowing about deep work is one thing. Actually putting it into practice is another. What advice would you give to someone who's ready to start incorporating deep work into their life?
I would say start small. Don't try to change everything overnight. Just pick one area where you could benefit from more focus. Maybe it's a project at work, a creative pursuit, or even just giving yourself some dedicated time to think deeply about a challenge you're facing.
So if you're listening, think about this. What's one thing you could give your undivided attention to this week? Could you carve out 30 minutes or an hour of uninterrupted time to focus on that one thing?
Minimize distractions, put your phone on silent, close your email, and just see what happens when you dedicate your full attention to that one task.
You might be amazed by what you accomplish and how you feel afterward. That sense of focus, that feeling of flow, that's the magic of deep work. And once you experience it, I have a feeling you'll be hooked. Until next time, happy diving.
Happy diving!